bucket of water here. Make sure it's clean water.
We're not making any new lime putty.
What's that?
We're not making any new lime putty.
We're not making any new lime putty?
No.
So imagine yourself.
Oh, so we're just
A bucket of clean water.
Okay.
So can I go through that with the lime putty then?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So over here, there's a bag of hydrated lime. It's a sack that's been uncovered. That was covered at the top over there. It's referred to as chemical lime or hydrated lime, and it's very different, as Diane was saying, from garden lime. Garden lime is just crushed limestone. Right. Hydrated lime has gone through a chemical process and it's been burnt at really high temperatures. And although it does release some CO2 when it's processed, it's not nearly as much as cement. And when it dries, it cures, it kind of turns back into limestone, and it reabsorbs some of the CO2. So also, as Diane mentioned, it's antibacterial, it's antifungal, so you don't have the problems with a rock foundation or masonry foundations that you normally do with mold and mildew, because the lime kills it, as well as it being hygroscopic, it absorbs and releases the moisture. So it's a real good marriage for a natural rock foundation and top. So it's good as a mortar and it's good as a plaster. But just, like there's this animal that is available, I think at Lowe's now, that's called hydrated garden lime. Don't get that. I don't know what that's about.
You just don't do it at Lowe's. You go to a construction site.
Like Southern States has that stuff, and it says on the side chemical lime, and you can, it's very powdery. It's not like a crushed rock. Well, of course they powder down that crushed rock pretty good for garden lime too, but if it has cute little roses on the bag, it's probably the wrong stuff. You want to make sure it's made for more. Right. Garden. Yeah, and masons add it to cement. So that's the kind that you want. Make sure it's builder's lime. There's a lot of different names for it, but essentially it's hydrated lime. So what has happened to it is they burn the lime, and then you have quicklime, which is big white chunks, and then they put on spacesuits and add water to it, which means slaking it means adding water to it or hydrating it, adding H2O. And Virginia Lime Company, you can buy lime putty that's in that form.
Really?
Right. And they've just been around for a few years. Yeah, Virginia Lime Company, and they have distributors all over. So that's really a good grade of it. Now, so this stuff, hydrated insinuates that it's wet, right? It's obviously not wet anymore, but it's hydrated lime in terms of it's gone through the chemical process that the burnt lime and the H2O have merged in a chemical way.
Kind of takes the place of the CO2.
Right.
The H2O takes the place of the CO2.
Right. So it releases the CO2, it absorbs H2O, and then they take the lime putty and they dry it out. So when you add water back to that, it's not nearly as caustic. However, when you are rehydrating your hydrated lime, you want to use goggles.
Like the planes and planes.
Right.
You take
if you want to get suited up.
That stuff's no joke.
Did you get
You don't want to breathe the dust.
Okay.
You don't want to get it splashed in your eyes. And you don't want to get it on your hands. If you've ever worked with cement, if you're sensitive to cement, you'll probably be sensitive to lime. And you don't know right away. And whenever, even if it's the dead of summer, when I'm working with lime, I'm going to be covered from head to toe. And you can tell this is my limey coat.
Laboratory situation.
So, if I was about to slake some lime, I would first re-slake it or rehydrate it. I would first put a couple of inches of water in the bottom of the bucket, because I don't want to put the powder in then and then pour the water on top of it and make the dust go all up. So I would put a couple of inches on the bottom, and then I would take the powder and put it in there and mix it and add the powder gradually and mix it with the paint mixer. You can get the paint mixer attachment from like any hardware store
Slowly,
has
slowly.
it, of course paint supplies. So that's great for mixing lime. And you can use it even with a battery drum.
Slowly.
Right. And so, and you want to get your lime putty to the consistency of?
Yogurt Greek.
There we go.
Yeah, sticker for that lady.
Okay, so I'm not wearing the dust mask because I'm not working with the powdered lime. This is like where we do the cooking show thing, right?
Well, could you show us the one you
Yeah, I'm going to show you, let's leave that one right there for now. We want to start with the lime putty. And I need an empty, yeah.
Did you say you could buy it already mixed then?
Yeah.
The lime
So-
putty, yeah. You can buy it in that form from Virginia Lime
It's just
Company, and they have
called lime putty.
distributors around the East Coast.
Yeah.
Okay, so this, so he's got gloves on and he's got a mask on to protect from splash. He doesn't need
I
the
don't need a
dust mask
slipper.
right now because we don't have any powder. So this lime putty was made a week ago, and what we did is we put a little bit of water in the bottom of a bucket. We added the powder gradually, and then when we got done, we put a layer of water on the top because it'll absorb more over time as the week goes on. Now, in like developing countries,
Like
when
Turkey.
their son is born, it's very patriarchal, they slake their lime. I mean, that's the great thing about lime. Like cement, man, you mix that, you better use it in 20 minutes or it's going to set up. As long as you keep that lime wet, you can keep it indefinitely. Longer is better.
Not as much like it.
Yeah. So we want to remix it. Yeah, we might have should have poured off some of the water off of the top. Okay.
So we're going to start building a top house in a year or two. They're trying to make a line of you now.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And then like, and it's amazing how much it absorbs later. Like you got it to a good grease consistency. It's a good idea to check it like a few days later to see how much it's absorbed and add some water and mix it again and then put another layer on top.
When you say layer is
Cold water. Just, it's not like a sealant, water sealant on top. Did you see that before you started mixing it ahead? And it'll separate, even if you didn't add any
right.
the water.
Now it's really
Yeah.
doing its job. Yeah, you want to
Yeah. You know what else we're gonna need? We're gonna need, Leslie, you know, there's a bag of those loose coffee cans and quart yogurt containers. There's a whole big black bag of them in the shelf. So we're gonna need that for measuring. Or just, you know, just like, I guess 3 of the quart containers.
interesting. And this is
So, yeah, so when you're, so here's your level of protection. The closer you get to a usable product, the less intense protection you need to have. So if we were re-wetting the powder, we would have everything on. Mask, goggles, gloves, and fully clothed. Now, if you get some lime putty on you, it's not going to like burn you immediately. It's like a slow process and you don't even realize it's happening. So if you're working with a partner in particular and you see lime on, say, oh, you might want to wash that off. Like it's not going to like, oh, you're afraid to get burned or anything like that, but just over time, because it is so caustic, you know, it's like the opposite end of the scale from acidic. You know, and we know we don't want to leave acid on our skin, well, nor do we want to leave lime on our skin.
And what do we do if we do get it, say, into eyes, nose, mouth, on skin? How do you counteract that?
Just for example.
Just for example, vinegar.
Vinegar.
Vinegar, like, yeah, you rinse it out with water for 15 minutes, your eye, which is really pleasant to have your eye open. So here's the deal. Don't do that. And especially remember when you're working with the plaster, because we have some really high walls, your eyes should always be at the minimum, even with where you're plastering, preferably above
Right.
the area you're plastering. And that way, when it splatters, it falls down and not up.
Ryan.
So okay, so this is the chronological order. Go to Southern States and get the powdered lime, or Virginia Lime Company, and you already have the lime putty. So we have turned that powder lime into this. The water and the lime separates. So a good way to know that you've got a good consistency is, do you see how it's peaking? You know, kind of like when you do a meringue, you got a little bit of a peak.
Right.
Then that's good.
Like
That, yeah, it could be a little bit thicker than that, but it's okay. This is not rocket science, this is natural building. So then when you're done mixing it, then if you dip it into the water bucket, and then go ahead and turn it on even, that's a good way to get it rinsed off quickly. There. And like this, that's how easy that is when it's wet. When it's dry, you're going to have to get out the wire brush.
Okay.
So with lime in particular, clean as you go. And that way it's a pretty easy process. So we don't want to put it in there. So, did you return
Sand?
the measuring cup?
I did.
did.
I didn't see him, but
Oh.
Diane just ran.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because she just cleaned out and reorganized the shed.
So if you're
I'm in the
planning-
process of moving from the cabin, which was on the property when I first moved here, into the garden cottage, which is the structure on the other side of this bathhouse. So I'm moving stuff around and getting organized, and I'm also setting up dual residence so that I can go to Brunswick, Georgia in the winter because I don't like snow. So there's my true confession. I'm becoming a snowbird.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Now, my question to you is, the most convenient idea is to buy it already made. But if you have to make it,
Yes.
you do it in the winter time, and you plan on letting it sit there so you don't have to deal with all that extra clothing
Right.
in the
But
summer.
it's kind of hard to get the, the lime out of your clothes, so you want to wear something that
Right.
you don't care about too. But yeah, so it really works out well to do it in a workshop. And you go home and build your own home, even though you might not do this structure of a workshop, you're going to have, family and friends and neighbors and any other volunteers that you can talk into doing it come over and help you. So, mixing up and early in the morning, chronologically, that's the best way to do it. Build foundation first, and then it feels like, okay, I'm learning how to build my house. So early in the morning,
Right.
in most climates it's cooler, unless you're like on the equator. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to find out what is the recipe for turning lime putty into something we can use for mortar between the rocks, to glue our rocks together. So she told you that. Did anybody write it down?
1 3 and 1 3.
So what's one and what's three?
1 is the putty, 3 is the sand, mason, a third of it.
Yeah, we have to get a poster up here for a start. So I'm answering all the questions right. Okay, so I'm going to put my goggles back on because I'm mixing. I've got raw putty now that I'm going to mix in the mortar. Once I add the sand to it and mix it in the mortar, then it will be so heavy that I don't have to worry about the splash anymore. So like I said, as you go further closer to the product that you're going to use, you can use less gear. So
Soon you'll be naked.
right, yeah. Well, actually, I will. If it goes up to 80
The neighbors will
degrees,
be going,
I'll
"No."
be butt naked in the creek taking a bath instead of in line for the shower. Okay, so
It's a pull top.
all my glasses. Yes, this is an all-natural workshop. Yeah, some of my neighbors told me that, like the other neighbors talk about it, and they're like, oh, they're going to have a workshop. They might be, swimming naked in the creek.
we will make it, mix it in the pink, little better.
Nobody got time for that.
This one I'm just going to do, oh, yeah, that's a better idea. Yeah. Okay, so remember the recipe is 3 parts sand, and this is mason sand. Did you talk about mason sand versus beach sand?
Yes.
Okay. So this is like, find out where the masons buy their sand. If you say, even if you go to Ready Mix and say, I want mason sand, they're going to go, oh, we don't have that, but they do. Ready Mix is not going to have beach sand. They're going to have sand that goes well with concrete. So that's a good place to get it. There's a place in, Mount Vernon, and they sell mason sand, but they sell it like pool sand. But you don't want to buy like a bag of pool sand from Lowe's, because it's going to be beach sand. It's going to be rounded, and that's like building your house with marbles, right? Okay, so what we're gonna do so that we don't, let's wait just a minute on that. So what we're gonna do so we don't have to figure out how much is a third is we're gonna triple the recipe, right? So it doesn't matter what size your container is if you know the recipe in parts, right? So if 3 parts sand equals 1 part lime putty, how many parts sand do I want to triple the recipe?
9.
Right, 9 parts sand, and then 3 parts lime putty, and then how much parts grog? 1. See, so it's a lot easier to go, oh, I wonder how much is a third, or get a measuring cup out, So this is some of our very sophisticated cobbing equipment that you're going to see throughout the workshop.
Does it have to be stone?
So yeah, so we want to count out 9 of these. Oh no! And you put the sand in first, and that way the lime doesn't stick to the wheelbarrow as much. 2. And I'm not using the other containers because I'm going to keep those clean for the lime putty and for the grog. Was that 3?
3.
We're going to be counting? Okay, good. Good thing you came. 4. 5. I don't think we did this before this way, so that's why I took over.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Is it 6?
You are
6.
6? Yeah. Diane Maldonado has been building with me for 2 years now and doing an active apprenticeship. This is her graduating teach. So after this course, she'll get her certificate. And she's just closing on her land, so it's perfect
Next
timing.
week, hopefully.
Is that 7 or 8?
7. This one 8.
Okay, 8. I'm trying, I can't shut up. I need to get a t-shirt. 9? That's it? Okay, so now, I want to say one other thing about working with lime, and when you're hydrating the lime, if you use the powder to go to lime putty, have 2 people working, and the person with clean hands handles the drill. If you get lime putty in your drill, it's over. And I'm speaking from experience. And it's very much a bummer because it's just really impossible to clean out. So the next thing we want to do is add the grog, and the grog, because it's easier to mix the dry ingredients together first and then add the powder.
Now, what is the grog made of?
Grog is fired clay that you can get from a pottery supply store. Or if you're more ambitious and you have way more time than money, you can crush up red bricks to get the required amount of material. What you need is fired clay. So the way that I found that out was I was looking for an alternative to use for mortar or for foundations besides cement. I really don't like Portland cement. It's kind of a blight. It's a one-way material, and the lime is actually recyclable. You can take lime plaster off the wall, put it in a batch of lime, rehydrate it, and put it back up there again. So cool. Whereas cement goes in the landfill. And it takes a lot more embodied energy to cook it. So what am I talking about? Grog. So I didn't know that about the grog, right? So grog is just a product that all potters use, and they use it to give their pottery tooth, you know, to give it some substance so it doesn't just go bleh, you know, so they put it in there. So you want the fine grog. So when you use lime for a plaster on the wall, it reabsorbs the CO2 from the air and kind of turns back into limestone. So it doesn't dry, it cures. It goes back through a chemical process and turns back into limestone. But when you put it between a couple of rocks, it's not exposed to the CO2 anymore, to the air. So instead, the grog, for whatever magical reason, creates the correct chemical reaction to turn the lime back into limestone, so it hardens it. So I bought a book on how to build a fireplace out of cob, a Rumford fireplace, because I'd heard of a Rumford fireplace, which is a real efficient fireplace. It leans forward, it's got like a chimney shelf, and I thought surely somebody has done this with cob because it just makes too much sense. And sure enough, so I bought this book from an organization called Cob and Cornwell in the UK, and that's where I found the lime mortar recipe. People all over the United States with the cob renaissance since 1993 has been using lime plaster, but the lime mortar people weren't using because it didn't set up good enough. Well, they've been using it for mortars for like millennium in the United Kingdom, you know, and all over Europe and all over Turkey and, you know, all those areas. So the recipe was in there with, you know, a third of a part of pozzolan additive. And I'm like, what the hell's that? So the guy in the UK, Katie Bryce is one of the authors, and her husband's name, who escapes me. So I'm like writing back and forth with this guy and going, well, what is that?
Bloody hell.
Yeah, and right, and so he's like, well, just go over to your local builder's supply and get some brick dust. It's the same thing, or you can make it. So our local builder's supply does not have brick dust. So we were making it. When we made the cob oven, the foundation for that, we made the brick dust. So we pounded red bricks, and I'm telling you, you really have to have a lot more time than money to want to do that. So my mentor, who is Christina Ott, a barefoot builder, who apprenticed with Yanto Evans and Linda Smiley with the Cob Cottage Company, who Yanto Evans is largely responsible for the Cob Renaissance in the United States. There's the history lesson for the week. She found out I was doing a natural rock foundation with a lime mortar, and she was interested in coming to Kentucky because there's many excellent masons in Kentucky to learn how to do, you know, stacking natural rock. So she came, and so we're breaking up the rocks, the bricks, to create the hardener, and she goes, grog. And I said, gesundheit. So her sister is a potter, and so she knew the properties of what it was. It's fired clay that's been ground up, and the reason that it's fired is so that it doesn't, you know, just melt into, and so it gives it that stiffness, and so then from there on. So I get my grog from a place called Kentucky Mudworks, and it's a pottery supply store. So any major metropolitan area, you know, you can find a potter supply store. There's going to be artists that are doing pottery.
Amazon.com.
Yeah,
probably
you can order
And
it
the
online.
trade name you would have before you go to a power supply and say, I want grog.
Right, it's not a trade name. It's a
Well,
yeah,
but-
it's
yeah,
a
They'll know
generic
what
name.
you mean.
It's like sand.
like Xerox
Yeah.
paper.
Now that mixture you have in the 5-gallon bucket, how much would that cover on a house? Or like, will that work the whole project today? What's in that bucket?
Oh yeah, if we turn that entire bucket into
Into what's in the wheelbarrow?
yeah, well, right, but
I mean,
you know,
that's just
9
part
to
of
1,
your
9 to 1,
mixture.
9 to 1, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'd be way
Okay.
more than
Okay, good.
way more than we need. Because this will make almost a 5-gallon bucket's full. You know what I mean? This